Hi everybody, this is Drew Tomlin from the Association for Middle Level Education, and we are going to talk about a wonderful subject, coding. And coding is tops in middle school. That's the article you're checking out right here at AMLE magazine. And it was written by two people, Greg Taranto, he's the principal of Canonsburg Middle School in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania. And joining us today is also one of the authors, Angela Marasco, and she teaches 8th grade mathematics and tops at Canonsburg Middle School. And of course, if you're checking out the article, you're just getting into it, TOP stands for Team-Oriented Problem Solving. So just really wanted to hear more about this progressive program. So thanks so much for joining us today, Angela.
Yeah, you're welcome. Hello.
Hello, hello. All right, so after a long day teaching 8th grade math, thanks for taking the time. We're going to start right off with the question. So the first one is, a bit of thanks. So thank you for sharing with us such a progressive program. Why is a program like TOPS perfect for the middle grades and for young adolescents?
Yes, so middle school students have some unique characteristics, and as a middle school teacher, we definitely need to keep those in mind as we're teaching them. One of those being that they want to be intellectually challenged, so that's something that TOPS does. The problem-solving part of it brings in problems that will make them think in new ways, that will expose them to something they haven't seen before, and also help them to apply some of the skills that they've learned in math class. And I found that at this age, the students want that, and they desire that challenge. And also, middle school students they're very active. They want to be involved in their learning, and they want to be engaged and pretty much involved in what you're doing in class. And TOPS allows them to do that through the team component of it. It allows them to be a little bit more independent. So I allow them to work with something with their group to figure something out, as opposed to me teaching them exactly kind of how I want them to look at the problem. So it allows them to be active and involved, and also incorporating the coding part. It's incredibly hands-on. The students are working with robots. They're working with groups of 2 or 3, and it's very engaging for them and definitely hands-on learning.
Wow, I mean, all those different ingredients that you just listed out, that it's about, the application of what they're learning. It's active, it's engaging, it involves both independent work as well as teamwork at the same time. I mean, goodness gracious. It definitely sounds like a program that's tailor-made for any young adolescent. Goodness. So well done. In terms of like the teacher's role, you talk about that in the article a little bit too. You say that facilitator is one of the key roles that a teacher needs to take in order for TOPS to be successful. Instead of the sage on the stage, kind of the guide on the side. So for you, was that a difficult shift for you? Why or why not? And what helped you to be successful in the role of facilitator with TOPS?
It wasn't too difficult of a shift, because I've always tried to encourage my students to think independently and come up with their own ideas. So I've encouraged them to be curious and to ask questions. So because of that, it wasn't too difficult of a shift for me to become a facilitator. I think as a teacher, a lot of times we want our students to think like we do, but I think it's more important for a teacher to teach the students how to think on their own. So I don't want to create students that think the same way I do, but instead help build students that think for themselves. So I think that's a mindset for teachers to take when they want to become more of a facilitator. So teaching students to think for themselves, and also encouraging them to be curious, encouraging them to ask questions, and not minding when they come up with their own way to solve a question or answer a problem.
Excellent. And in some ways, it's ironic that you're teaching them to program robots when really what you're really wanting them to do is not to be programmed themselves. You don't want them to be little automatons just kind of doing what you tell them to do. You want them to discover new ways to solve problems. I think that's really cool. So and I'm just trying to get, when I was reading the article, I was just thinking back to my own middle school days. If I walked into a classroom and there were bots like in the class, like I would have just gone bananas. So when your students first encountered those bots, how did they react? And then what was their biggest learning outcome? And then even more, like what was yours as a teacher and a facilitator? I know that's like three big questions, but go ahead and walk us through it.
Yeah, so first of all, then when they first saw the robots, they were incredibly intrigued by them. Just so many questions. What are these? What do they do? When are we going to use them? Are we going to use them tomorrow? How do I make it work? Just all kinds of questions. They wanted to use them, and they were eager to start that hands-on learning. And I found that one of their biggest learning outcomes is just learning the preciseness of coding. So they have seen if they're missing something small in their code, it's not going to work properly. Like, for example, if a student forgets to put a time value in for when they want their robot to roll, it won't roll like it's supposed to. So they've really learned that they have to be really, really precise. So even though I'm not telling them exactly how to solve a problem, when they come up with their own idea and pathway, they have to be very, very precise and very accurate with what they're coding into their robot.
Cool.
And I believe the last question was my biggest learning outcome.
Right, yeah.
I've learned that the students can really do a lot on their own. So I've learned that when they're given the right tools and the right background and information, they're really able to take off and work independently. It's been really great to watch the students work through an entire lab and complete it accurately without really much of my input at all, other than just my instructions on a paper or on a handout. So It's been really neat to see how they truly can work independently and come to a solution.
That's really neat. And it's like you said, it's a wonderful blend of both creativity and problem solving, but then you have to marry that with precision in order to make that creativity come to fruition. And I think that can be a struggle for a lot of young adolescents. So if I can ask you just another question, for parents and families, were parents and families, I mean, how have they taken to the TOPS program? Was it hard or easy for them to get on board with what you were trying to do, or what are they about?
Yeah, it's neat to see. There's usually very positive reactions to TOPS from parents and family members. I always send a letter home to the parents letting them know what TOPS is like, with one of the biggest highlights being that it's a great preparation for the students for the future. Because knowing that in the future, most of them will work in jobs where they're working in teams, and they'll be asked to solve all sorts of problems and apply what they know. So TOPS is a great way to introduce that. When I was able to tell about the class during our open house at the school, there was parents that left the class saying that they want to take this class. They were really interested. I showed them some of the things the students do, and they were wanting to solve the problems, and a couple of them, had heard some of the problems that we did. Students had told them when they got home from school. So it's really neat to see the positive reaction that families have to the class.
That's super great, and not a surprise at all. I know I would be excited about it too if I was a parent coming into your class. For a teacher who wants to do something like this, but they don't know where to start, what's the first step? Where would I begin?
So I think a great first step would be to find some ways where you can incorporate coding without the investment of the technology. So when a teacher uses technology, it's definitely an investment. It's going to be a large purchase for them or for the school. And I know there's great ways to incorporate coding that doesn't require that technology investment. So you could perhaps assign students to be robots and create certain maybe commands that a student knows as a robot, and then have another student write a code. So maybe that student has to have the student walk through a maze, have the robot walk through a maze.
Right.
Or
right.
robot, that's a student.
Yeah.
Or maybe they have a certain cup formation that the robot has to build just based on the commands that the student wrote. So those are some ways to kind of get a teacher's feet wet into coding without making the large investment of using technology.
Right, right. Just to kind of understand the concept of it and to get their students to understand it too. So, all right. So I'm going to take you on a metaphorical journey now, Angela. It's kind of, again, I don't want to program you into, like, you know, answering in a certain way. So you're going to let your creativity flow here. If coding was a food for middle level education, what kind of food would it be and why?
So
Oh, I think
nutritious.
Go ahead. Your bandwidth just kind of went a little wonky. But go ahead. Start again.
So the food would have to be some sort of a nutritious food. So I'm thinking of specifically a sweet potato. So the reason I think of that is because they're one of my favorite foods. So I know more about them, but a sweet potato specifically contains some really essential nutrients for a person. So it can help a person function better, especially there's a lot of vitamin A, so great for your eyes and great for other areas to help your body function properly. So with that said, coding also has some really essential elements for middle school students. The reason that that's true is because the direction our country is moving is in the direction where almost every job you need to know how to read and write code. So there's jobs that used to be a person used to do it, but now it's replaced by a computer. But someone needs to know how to code that computer. So it's essential that students as young as possible are being exposed to coding. But the reason why I picked a sweet potato and not just some other nutritious vegetable or fruit was because you can hide a sweet potato in food without people knowing it. So for example, you could make bread out of a sweet potato, you could make pancakes, and they're both really delicious, but you have no idea that there's nutrients in it. So similar to coding, I have my students learning how to code, but it's almost hidden in an engaging hands-on activity with a robot, or a teacher could incorporate it with some of the other non-technology activities that I mentioned without the students really noticing that they're actually learning how to code.
Oh my gosh, that was awesome. You had me just at sweet potato, but then you took it to a whole other level. That was awesome. Hiding it in, oh, that's great. That's great. And I'll never see a sweet potato the same way, Angela. Well, gosh, thank you so much for just talking a little bit more about this program. TOPS sounds like it's definitely top shelf. And obviously it wouldn't happen without your dedication, your time, and your effort. So thank you. I know your students are very fortunate to have you at the helm.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for the time again, and thank you for the article, and thank you, AMLE Magazine readers, for checking out this Google Hangout and this article here at AMLE Magazine. With AMLE, where we help you reach every student, grow professionally, and create great schools. Thanks again, Angela.
Thank you.